The Philippines, a past revisited, from the Spanish colonization to the Second World War, by Renato Constantino. This book is highlighting the history of the Filipino people's struggle for freedom and independence from the oppressive Spanish colonial regimes.
Renato Constantino. Renato Constantino was a Filipino historian, academic, and educator who taught Filipinos to evaluate, correct, and learn from our colonial history. He was born on March 10, 1919, and he passed away on September 15, 1999 at the age of 80. According to Simbulan 2007, Renato was considered as most influential Filipino writer in the 20th century because of his written works published in books and pamphlets that influenced several generations of Filipinos. He wrote an estimated of 80 books and various monograms and pamphlets during his time. The Philippines, a past revisited, is one example of his work.
This book consists of 4 parts. 1. Liberation Transformed. 2. The Crucible of Practice. 3. Unity and Disunity. 4. Prologue, with 18 chapters in total.
However, in this video, we are only going to tackle the chapter 4 of the book, which is entitled as Pacification and Exploitation.
But before we discuss chapter 4, we need first to define this term so that it will be clear as we go on with the topic. Encomiendas refers to large territories in the Philippines that King Philip II entrusts to the encomenderos. Encomenderos, individual who has the power to collect tribute from the natives. Natives, people living in the Philippines. Tribute refers to the payment given by the natives to the encomenderos. Exploitation, the act of unfair treatment of encomenderos to natives in order to benefit on their work.
East Indies refers to the lands in the east from Philippines to New Guinea. Viceroy, an official who represents a king or queen and rules for him or her in other country. Conquistador, one that conquers. Polista refers to the natives who work under polo y servicio.
The Spaniards, especially the Spanish monarchs, were eager to expand their kingdom and defend their lands from the Portuguese. That was why King Philip of Spain decided to fund an expedition to the East Indies to gain a foothold in the region and bring gold and spices back to Mexico or New Spain. The Spanish Viceroy in Mexico appointed Miguel Lopez de Legazpi to do this. But who is Miguel? He is a Spanish colonist or explorer and served as the first governor in the Philippines from 1565 until his death. He was told that regardless of the fact that the voyage was funded by the royal treasury, he would be expected to fund some of the expedition's needs. He will, however, be awarded 4,000 ducats and other honors if he succeeded in establishing a community in the Indies. He agreed to these conditions and began making preparations with his own money. Such missions were driven by a tremendous desire for riches. As a conquistador, Legazpi desired not only an honor but also great fortune. The type of contractual agreement for exploration and colonization started the exploitative actions of the officers. Legazpi and his successors implemented several measures aimed at pacifying the people and allowing them to pursue their personal enrichment desires while also strengthening Spanish sovereignty. By the time Legazpi and his men landed in Cebu, he found an underdeveloped economy where they could barely support their needs. Due to their suffering of poverty, Legazpi requested a reward for their services to the crown. The king granted his request. Thus, encomienda system was introduced. In 1578, the dual purpose of pacification was clearly emphasized when Gonzalo Ronquillo de Peñalosa and King Philip II had an agreement. Gonzalo de Peñalosa himself funded an expedition in exchange for a lifetime appointment as governor of the Philippines, given an encomienda in each major town and the ability to assign individuals to administrative positions of his choice. As a result, corruption, inequality, and cruel exploitation were spread.
Encomenderos are individuals who were assigned as deputy by the crown with several responsibilities. One of these responsibilities includes collecting tribute to the natives who live under their encomienda. They need to collect tribute from 19 to 60 years old male inhabitant. These men are required to pay 8 reals annually. They can pay it in cash or any equivalent in kind. Furthermore, encomenderos has threefold responsibility. First is to protect natives by maintaining peace and order within their encomiendas. Second is to support the missionaries in their work of converting people to Catholicism. And lastly is to help in defense of the colony. Just like other positions, encomenderos also have limitations. As stated in the Law of Indies, encomenderos cannot own a house within their encomienda, as well as prohibited to stay for more than one night. These laws supposedly implemented in the Philippines. However, in the instruction of King Philip II given by Governor Gomez Perez Dasmariñas, encomenderos are only encouraged to live near their encomiendas in order to monitor the natives better. Yet, encomenderos prefer to live in the city due to two reasons. First is the convenience of urban life, and second is the lure of profits made from China trade. Encomenderos and their heir only have 2 to 3 lifetimes to hold encomienda. After that, it will bring back to the crown. Moreover, encomenderos have no rights to the lands of the native. When the native dies, their land will go to his heirs. If the native had no heirs, it will automatically be given to his community in order to help pay its tribute assessments. Since most of encomenderos live in the city, they assign someone to collect the tribute of the natives. These people are called cabezas de barangay, or also known as the chief. When the chief are done collecting the tribute of the natives, he will now give it to the encomenderos who's living in the city. In simple words, the natives pay their tribute to the chief, and then the chief will forward it to their encomenderos. Even though there are mandated responsibilities encomenderos have to fulfill, and several limitations to follow, these do not stop them from violating the natives' rights. Encomienda system is nothing but greed and cruelty as stated in the book. Encomenderos took this opportunity to enrich themselves. In result, they executed several exploitations, like collection of the above mandated tribute, forced labor, bandala, and divide and rule that led to even more suffering of the natives.
We already mentioned earlier that the natives whom ages 19 to 60 years old are required to pay tribute. However, there is an exemption for this. Incumbent gobernadillos, cabezas and families, government employees, soldiers, descendants of Lacandula, few of native chieftains, choir members, sacristans, porters of church, and government witnesses are those individuals who are not obligated to pay tribute. Tribute collectors abused their power. They collected more tribute than the usual. They obligated the cabezas de barangay to pay them in cash. If the chief cannot do so, they will imprison and worst, torture him.
Forced labor, or also known as polo y servicio. In 1580, men natives who are between 16 to 60 years of age are required to serve for 40 days. However, in 1884, the system has changed and it only became 15 days per year. The chief and his eldest son is the only exception for this. The regulation on polo provided a payment of 1/4 real each day plus rice to each polista. In addition, polista are not required to work during planting and harvesting season. They are also prohibited to be brought to a distant place. If voluntary Chinese workers are available, Polistas are not required to work. But these are all violated when war begins. Polistas are brought to distant place for months to build and vessel the ships. Due to this, the community experiences manpower shortage that leads them to suffer in hunger.
During the first half of 17th century, Governor Sebastian Hurtado de Corcuera introduced an exploitative device called the bandala. Since government does not have enough fund, they set annual quotas to each province for compulsory sale of products to the government. The natives who cannot pay in full were given only promissory notes, which were seldom redeemed in full.
The last exploitive act mentioned in this chapter is divide and rule. Natives were recruited to train in order to defend the Spanish government. They set up bulk troop fighting force just in case war began. The natives then have no choice but to follow the orders of the higher officials.
Our personal analysis. Chapter 4 shows how pacification and the encomienda system work in the Philippines and how it became the root of the sufferings of the natives. During the Spanish colonization, Catholicism was spread in the Philippines that is so widely practiced across the country now. The establishments that they built also contributed to the economy in which natives of the land also shared hard works, but by the Spanish officials' coercive and inhuman treatment. However, during their reign, many exploitative activities occurred, which was why the natives suffered a lot because of the authorities' greediness for wealth. Their rights had been violated, and they had been tormented, tortured, and manipulated as if they were not the land's indigenous inhabitants. Also, in this chapter, the author demonstrated how Spaniards mistreated the local in the Philippines, but we noticed that some of those appointed to collect tributes were also natives, indicating how hungry they were as well. In conclusion, there has not been much of a progression that happened throughout this time, yet they undoubtedly contributed and are one of the reasons why we have our own history.